you're listening to this, keep one lamp on. Don't laugh, just do it. One lamp, warm bulb, not the cold LED kind. Those don't touch corners, right? My name is Mark, I'm 45, and I live in a place where the HOA puts rules on the night. I'm not telling you a ghost story. I'm telling you something that happened last Halloween in Maple Glen, right off the old service road, 2 miles past the little white church with the rotting steeple. If you've ever ignored a notice on orange paper because it sounded dramatic and small, this is for you. Before I drown you in details, do me a favor so I know who's out there. Where are you listening from and what time is it right now? Drop it below, and if you like real slow burn horror that could happen on your street, subscribe. It keeps this story in front of people who might need the warning before October. Okay? The HOA email looked like all the others. Calm font, confident spacing, the logo that wants to look like a handshake. Driggle, Halloween night protocol. It listed the usual, no strobe lights, no motion-activated screams, keep walkways clear. Then a line I still see when I close my eyes. Porch lights must remain on 9 p.m. for boss AM. Voluntary graveyard patrol, 2:30 to 3:30 a.m. Non-participation may result in citation and corrective actions. I rolled my eyes so hard Jenna laughed. Mark, she said, they're just trying to keep teenagers from being idiots. We passed out candy, shut the door, killed the porch light at 11:50 because the bowl was empty and the kids needed sleep. I slept on the couch with the TV low, one sock on, one sock off, because I'm a respectable mess of a middle-aged dad. At 3 a.m., the doorbell rang. It wasn't the friendly ding we hear at 6 when Amazon lies and says they knocked. It was a tone I hadn't heard our doorbell make, lower, patient, a sound that assumed we were awake. I got up. Habit. Dad brain. Alarmed, but trying not to look it. I padded past the hallway photo wall. The kids at the beach. Jenna in a red scarf. Me pretending to know how to grill. And looked through the peephole. A man stood on my porch. He wore my jacket. He had my height, my posture after a long day at a desk. My jawline when I'm trying not to grind my teeth. He stood very still, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. His head tilted a fraction, in the lens that warps people a little. His eyes were dark and calm. His hands hung at his sides like he didn't use them for talking. I did what scared people do to pretend they aren't. I opened the inside lock as if I might open the door, then stopped. My hand found the chain and rested on it. Through the peephole, he smiled, but not with his whole face. Just the mouth remembering a picture. Jenna, I whispered, because saying my wife's name made the house sound more solid. She didn't wake. The TV murmured some cooking show logic. I stood there breathing shallow, watching myself stand under my own porch light. I didn't open the door. I backed up 2 steps, the wood under my heel giving a tired groan. The bell did not ring again. The man turned, or the shadow shaped like me turned and stepped out of frame. I held my breath long enough to feel stupid. Then I went back to the couch like a child who promised monsters can't survive dawn. By breakfast, the night had shrunk to something we could make jokes about. Probably a camera glitch, I told Jenna. Old lens makes strangers look like everyone. We packed lunches, argued kindly about laundry, got the kids to school, and I tried to shelve the fear like mail. At noon, an envelope showed in our mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Just HCA embossed faintly in orange and a line inside, typed like a receipt. Lot 12, thank you for your non-participation. $1,000 fine scheduled. Please keep lights on between 9 and 4:1 for the safety of the community. I marched to the HOA office inside the community center, the one that smells like new carpet and printer heat. The young guy at the counter with the kind of smile you get from a workshop handed me a brochure. It's just seasonal compliance, sir. We really appreciate neighbors who keep the porch lights on. It helps us maintain tradition. What tradition? I asked. The smile didn't move. The safe one, he said. On my way home, I cut by the community lot where they staged the farmer's market in spring. The grass was scalped low the way HOA grass always is. Too green for October, too flat. In the far corner, near the utilities easement, the earth was disturbed. Not dug like a hole you'd play in, turned. 17 shallow rectangles laid out like a tidy calendar. Each had a simple plywood marker staked at the head. Names printed in a font the HOA uses for everything. I walked the line like a man pretending to be brave. Merritt. Lot 6, 1002, E. Voss. 38, 1003, Henderson. Lot 12, 1000 I stared at my marker until the letters blurred. Then in the dirt at the foot of the rectangle, I saw a metal badge peeking out. Rounded, heavy, stamped with the HOA crest like a coin that wants to be important. I knelt. The soil was damp, though it hadn't rained. I dug 2 fingers in and pulled the badge free. Volunteer, graveyard shift on the front. Mark Henderson on the back. Fresh dirt under the rim. Dark smear I didn't name. Someone had put my name in the ground before I ever said yes to anything. I wiped my hands on the grass like that would make me cleaner inside. I wanted to throw the badge back and go home and eat cereal standing up like my son does, and pretend the world is made of small choices. I put the badge in my pocket instead. That's the part of me I don't like. That afternoon I went to the church because I needed an adult who wasn't trained in compliance. Father Thomas doesn't waste words. He keeps his gray hair like a man who's earned it, and his eyes like someone who's sat in rooms where people have run out of language. I told him about the bell and the man with my face and the 17 rectangles, and my name on a stake like a label on Tupperware. He listened. He wore the same quiet expression he uses at funerals when the living try to apologize to the dead for not being perfect. When I was done, he said, "We built a neighborhood over a cemetery, Mark. We pretended the ground was blank because it was easier to sell square footage. The old folks used to light lamps on Halloween so the buried didn't wander. The HOA folded it into a rule so people would obey it without asking why. So this is superstition," I said, and the word felt weak in my mouth. "It's memory," he said, "and memory is more stubborn than fear." He leaned closer, the way you do when you don't want to scare someone but you don't want to lie. "If you hear the bell at 3, do not open your door. Keep one light on. That's the rule they wrote for a reason. What happens if I do?" I asked. He swallowed. "Then the house stops acting like it belongs only to you." I drove home past the lot without looking. I put the badge in a kitchen drawer under the napkins and told Jenna dinner would be takeout because I didn't feel like being alive in a kitchen. That night we kept the lamp on in the living room and the porch light glowing like a small sun. I tucked our daughter in, double-checked the windows, kissed my son on the crown the way I've done since he was 2 because any day he might be too old for that. At 2:57, I lay awake counting the hums of the refrigerator and promising myself sensible thoughts. Wiring faults, teenagers, reflection. At 3 gores, the bell rang. The sound went through the house like a tone you feel in your teeth. Jenna rolled over, half awake. "Don't," she whispered, and I didn't know if she meant don't go or don't breathe. I walked on the pads of my feet to the door. I didn't look through the peephole. I stood with my forehead against the wood like it could translate words from the other side. The bell did not ring again. Something like a breath moved under the crack, just enough to move the curl of leaflet we keep tucked there. I didn't look down. I stared at my own hallway mirror across from the door, the one that makes our little house look a foot longer than it is. For 1 second, the hallway in the mirror looked deeper, like the angle had changed without the house's permission, and then it was just my lamp's reflection again. When I finally slept, it was with my shoes on and the lamp making a circle on the ceiling. The HOA sent a "thank you for your cooperation" the next morning with a timestamp I didn't like. 3:03 a.m. Under it, small, "We appreciate households that honor tradition." At lunch, a second envelope waited by the front door. No stamp again, just placed there like a plate at a wake. Inside was a printed map of the community, with a path highlighted in orange from our door to the lot and back. Graveyard Patrol, Route A. The back had a schedule with my name in the 3 a.m. slot on Halloween night. Voluntary, I told myself, reading the caps. Voluntary the way those emails at work say optional, but your name shows up in red if you don't go. I started noticing small things. Our porch light, when I turned it on at dusk, took a split second longer than it should to warm up, as if it was listening for permission. The thermostat blinked 9 to 4 for a heartbeat after we set it. The hallway smelled faintly sweet, like burned sugar and old leaves even when the windows were shut. The lot's rectangles stayed rectangles. Farmer's market neat. No deeper, no shallower, just the same promise of a hole. Neighbors pretended to be busy with their trash bins when I passed. The Merritts across the street made brisk talk about football while not looking at my eyes. Daniel asked me without asking me if I'd gotten my seasonal assignment. When I said yes, his mouth made the shape of sympathy without the sound. The bell rang 4 more nights that week. I didn't open the door. I didn't look through the peephole. I stood behind the wood and counted seconds and practiced being a grown man who can stand still. Then it stopped. For 3 nights. You want to know something stupid? Silence is worse. Silence makes you bargain. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone moved. Maybe the HOA tested everyone and I passed. The 3rd quiet night, I slept like a person again. Dreamed of nothing. I woke up with the kind of optimism that comes not from logic, but from the body wanting out. We ate pancakes in the kitchen like a family in a commercial. The kids argued about syrup ownership. Jenna made a grocery list and drew a star next to milk like we'd forget what milk is. The sun made our fridge look whiter. My mind filed Halloween underhandled. That afternoon, Father Thomas texted, "Lamp stayed on?" I sent back a thumbs up like that could hold all the weight a priest was trying to carry for me. At 9:00 p.m., the porch light came on by itself. I told myself I'd set a timer. At 11:10, I checked the drawer for the badge. It wasn't there. I took everything out, napkins, takeout menus, rubber bands that only hold for 2 days. And the drawer made the empty sound a drawer makes when you're out of excuses. I found the badge on the porch, sitting dead center on the welcome mat like a coin on a grave. The metal was clean, freshly wiped. My name caught the lamp glow. I didn't touch it. I didn't want that cold in my palm again. At 3 a.m., the bell rang. Not one tone 3. Not frantic, not loud. Measured like a pulse a doctor reads. I pressed my forehead to the wood. The smell under the door was soil. Not garden soil. Not the happy fat kind that talks about tomatoes. This was old. Wet without water. I told myself 100-inch deep lies. Wind under the seal. Prank. Neighbor's jammed bell. In the mirror, the hallway looked normal. In my chest, the heartbeat was not. A sound like a finger tapped the glass of the peephole. Polite, twice, I didn't look. The air at the crack of the door cooled by a degree, like a hand was on the other side. I kept my hand on the chain and counted 30. When I finished, the bell stopped. A minute later, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, though it was on airplane mode. 3 a.m. Thank you for your participation, Lot 12. Under it, see you Halloween night. The message cleared itself. I slept until almost 9, like a man who passed a test by not speaking. In the afternoon, I drove to the lot and walked the rectangle line one more time the way people look at a tooth. That's cracked to see if it's truly cracked or only dramatic. The markers hummed in the pale sun. 33 Henderson, the dirt had been disturbed. Not deeper, not wider, just touched, like someone smoothed it with their palm. The badge wasn't there. Small, shallow print the size of a badge edge was, I whispered. Who are you? To no one. Because what else do you do when your name sits politely at the head of earth? The wind through the easement answered with the sound of wires that don't care about your questions. Halloween was 3 nights away. The HOA app added a banner. Keep the lights on for tradition. We bought candy because pretending is how humans live. I planned to ignore the patrol route. I planned to keep the lamp on and sit with my back against the door from 2:45 to 3:45 and breathe like a man in a paper bag. I planned to be boring and alive. The night before Halloween at 9:17 p.m., someone slid an envelope under our door. Same orange emboss. Inside, 1 sentence. Lights left off 10:31 result in correction. Below it, a small printed map of the lot with Thinberger 3 circled and the word prepared. I didn't show Jenna that one. I told her I'd handle the porch lights and we'd do a movie night with the kids and talk loudly over any bell that thought it could speak to us. If you're listening to me now, keep your lamp on. Mean it. Some rules are dumber than others, some are meaner, and some were written a long time ago because someone was scared for a reason and didn't know how to print in orange. This next part is the one I still dream in. This next part is where I learned how thin wood is, and how a bell can remember you if you let it. Tomorrow I'll tell you about the patrol, about the road around the lot at 2:50 a.m., about the smell of dirt that had been turned and turned again, about the shape I saw at the edge of the utilities line, and what the priest left in our mailbox without a stamp. I'll tell you how I failed one time and lived, and how I almost didn't the second. And if you want the truth of the ending, the part where people ask, "Did you open it?" and I say, "Not until I had to," you'll get it. But not without the small ugly details. Those are what make it real. For now, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. And if your porch light has a timer, set it now. I'll meet you at 3. Halloween night started like any other Thursday. Cheap candy on the counter, porch lights glowing warm, and the HOA app sending polite reminders that read like warnings in disguise. Thank you for maintaining illumination. Lot 12. See you tonight. I told Jenna I'd stay up to keep an eye on the lights, the same way men in movies say they'll check the fuse box before things go wrong. The truth was simpler. I didn't trust sleep anymore. At 2:45 a.m., the neighborhood held its breath. The air outside looked thick, not foggy exactly. More like the light from 1,000 porches was hanging in suspension, unable to find a place to land. I put on my coat. The badge wasn't in the drawer anymore. It sat on the table, shining like someone had just polished it. A folded note beneath it read, "Tonight you walk your route." I thought about ignoring it, but the app notification blinked Route A active. If I didn't move, it would start pinging. Even my phone wanted me compliant. So I stepped out. The street was unnaturally orderly, each house identical, each porch bulb glowing the same tone of amber. From every mailbox, a faint hum. The same frequency as the doorbell that had ruined my sleep for weeks. I walked past the Merritt's place. Their window shades were drawn, but I could see silhouettes moving inside, slow, looping like people pacing a tiny room. No sound, just motion. The path on my printed map led toward the community lot, that rectangle of trimmed grass that always smelled faintly of fertilizer and now something metallic. When I reached it, the world had narrowed. The only sounds were my own shoes and a low rustle that didn't come from trees. The 17 graves looked cleaner than before, their edges sharper, soil darker, damp. The plywood placards gleamed with fresh varnish under the shared glow of every porch light. And then, movement. A figure in a reflective HOA vest at the far end, standing still. I called out, "Hey, you're the other volunteer." No reply. The badge on their chest reflected my flashlight. Stepped closer. It wasn't a person. It was a mirror mounted on a stand, angled just enough to catch my own light. My reflection stared back at me in that yellow vest, head tilted, lips parted like it wanted to say something. On the mirror's surface, faint print. Lot 12, Mark Henderson, compliance pending. My throat dried. I moved backward and nearly tripped over one of the mounds. My boot caught the edge of a placard. It wasn't plywood anymore, it was metal. And when my light hit it, the letters pulsed once before fading. That's when I heard it, the doorbell sound, faint but echoing from across the whole community. Not from my house, not from any single direction, from everywhere. Like the neighborhood itself had lungs. I ran. Every porch I passed flickered. Lights dipped, recovered, dipped again. The glow made faces on glass, just quick enough to doubt yourself. One looked like Jenna's, another mine. I turned the final corner toward home, lungs cutting air like paper. Our house stood there, calm, all lights on. At the door lay the badge. I hadn't carried it. It was supposed to be at the lot, but there it was, dustless, perfectly centered on the mat. The new engraving along the rim read, "Graveyard shift, completed." I didn't open the door right away. The bell rang once, only once. The tone was softer this time, almost approval. When I stepped inside, the light stabilized. The refrigerator hummed again. The clock blinked back to its normal green digits and Jenna stirred from the couch. "Everything okay?" she mumbled. "Yeah," I lied. "Just a weird HOA thing." Before sleeping, I checked the app. The Fine 1000 tag beside my name was gone. Replaced with status cleared. Next review, 10/31 next year. You ever realize you passed a test you didn't sign up for? That's what it felt like. Like the ground had nodded politely and marked me safe for now. The next morning, the neighborhood group chat filled with messages. "Strange noises last night? Someone saw lights in the lot?" HOA replied with its usual calm. "Thank you for another peaceful Halloween. Compliance ensures community harmony. They say silence is peace. Whoever said that never lived in a neighborhood that hums when it sleeps. For a week after Halloween, there were no bells, no notes, no app notifications at odd hours. The lights obeyed their schedule. The HOA thanked us in generic templates. Jenna started believing it had all been stress. The kids went back to complaining about homework. Even Father Thomas stopped calling. But the silence felt wrong. Not empty, just waiting. Every night I'd find myself staring at the porch lamp through the curtains. It glowed steady, too steady. No moths, no flicker, just a perfect pool of gold that never cooled. The glass was hot to the touch, yet the bulb never burned out. On the 7th night at 3:03 a.m., the porch light turned off by itself for exactly 3 seconds. The house didn't darken. It blinked. When it came back on, the front door unlocked with a faint click. I checked every window, every hinge. No sign of tampering. But on the inside of the door, at eye level, someone had pressed a single dirty thumbprint in the shape of a small circle. Not mud, soil, wet, cold soil. I cleaned it with a towel, tossed the towel in the trash, and pretended nothing happened. The next morning, the HOA sent out a cheerful newsletter. Subject: post-Halloween gratitude. We appreciate residents for keeping our community safe. Reminder: year-end maintenance will begin this week in the north lots. Please avoid the area after dusk. The north lots meant the graves. That evening I drove past the site. A backhoe stood parked beside the old utility shed. But the ground, it hadn't been dug. It had been leveled. Perfectly flat, grass rolled out like a rug over whatever had been underneath. No markers, no plaques, no proof there had ever been 17 rectangles. When I stopped the car, the motion light on the shed clicked on. The door was open, creaking slightly in the cold breeze. Inside, I saw what looked like stacks of wooden boards, each stenciled with faint white numbers, number 1 through number 17. My stomach folded when I saw that number 3 was missing. I told myself some maintenance guy moved it. I told myself lies I could swallow. That night, the bell didn't ring, but the refrigerator made the same tone. A small exact 3-note hum. When I opened it, the light inside flickered once and the badge was sitting on the middle shelf beside the milk. Perfectly clean, still cold. The next day I went to the church. Father Thomas looked tired, eyes red, voice quiet. He didn't ask why I came. He just said, "You've seen the ground change, haven't you?" I nodded. He sighed, pulled a folder from a drawer and laid out yellowed photocopies. Maps of the area before the subdivision existed. Where our community sits now, the map said Hollow Creek Memorial Ground, closed 1954. He told me the story like he was reading a prayer. The land was never properly consecrated. The church sold it to developers on the condition that one light would always burn there every All Hallows Eve. But when the HOA formed, they rewrote it as a rule. Rules are easier to obey than faith. Why 17? I asked. 17 headstones went missing during construction, he said. No one knows where they were moved, or if they were moved at all. Then he looked at me like a man forced to say what he shouldn't. Mark, if the bell is stopped, it's because the list is complete. The ground rests until it needs names again. I asked him, so what happens now? He said, now the quiet begins. Don't trust it. That night Jenna woke me at 2:59. She whispered, "Do you hear that?" The air was thick. No bell, no hum. Just a faint scraping, like nails against wood from under the porch. I told her to stay put, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped outside. The boards creaked under my weight, and for a second, the sound stopped, as if listening. Then the light under the porch shifted, not reflection, movement. I crouched, shone the beam through the slats. Something glinted back, metal half buried. The badge again. When I pulled it free, the back engraving had changed. Lot 12, retained. A chill climbed my spine. Retained like property. Not saved, not spared, owned. I looked toward the lot beyond the street. From this distance it looked harmless. A dark rectangle framed by porch light halos. But for the first time since moving in, I realized no one ever walked there anymore. Even dogs refused to bark in that direction. At 3:03, the lights across the community blinked again, in perfect sync. A pulse through every house, one beat like a shared heart. Then silence returned, heavier than before. I didn't sleep. The next morning, Father Thomas's church was closed. A notice taped to the door read, "Service suspended due to unforeseen maintenance." No date, no signature. The app, however, had a new banner. "Maintenance complete, harmony restored. Thank you, Lot 12, for your continued compliance." That was the day I realized you don't have to die for a place to bury you. If you're listening to me right now, leave a light on tonight. And tell me, have you ever heard silence that sounds like it's breathing? Because that's what mine does now. And tomorrow, when I tell you about the letters that started arriving again, without stamps, wet with soil, you'll understand that Halloween doesn't end here. It just goes underground. It started again with the mail. No sound, no bell, no warning. Just a white envelope sitting on our porch one morning, half buried in wet dirt. No stamp, no handwriting. Just our address printed in that same calm HOA font that never used italics, never used emotion. The corner of the paper was soaked through, not from rain, but from something darker. When I picked it up, the dirt fell away in clumps like it didn't want to leave. Inside was a single page, faintly smudged, typed on an old ribbon printer. Lot 12. You were seen walking beyond your route. Correction pending. I didn't remember walking beyond anything, but I remembered the mirror and my own reflection smiling back. That evening, I drove to the HOA office again. The door was locked. The lights were off, but through the glass, I could see chairs arranged in a circle around the center of the room. 17 folding chairs, facing inward, each with a clipboard laid neatly on the seat. On every clipboard, the same header: Volunteer Graveyard Shift, sign below to retain harmony. And on the third chair, my badge. I backed away, phone raised to take a picture. But the screen wouldn't focus. It kept flickering between camera and low light mode, like it was seeing something darker than the room itself. That night, I didn't tell Jenna. I sat in the kitchen instead, reading that paper again and again. The word correction looked mechanical, like something an algorithm wrote after learning how to sound polite. At 3:03 a.m., there was movement outside. Not footsteps, dragging. Slow, deliberate, like someone pulling a heavy bag across gravel. When I peeked through the blinds, I saw the porch light flicker, and then steady itself. A figure stood by the mailbox. Not close enough to see clearly, but tall. Still. In the dim orange light, it looked like someone in an HOA vest, clipboard in hand. When the wind moved the trees, I saw something shine on the vest pocket. A badge. My badge. The one that was supposed to be on that third chair. The figure didn't move. Didn't look toward the house. It just stood there until the porch light blinked again. And then it was gone. The next morning, the mailbox was full of dirt, not papers. Not envelopes. Just dirt, packed tight, moist, with tiny white scraps mixed inside. I poured it out onto the driveway and froze. The scraps were ribbons of paper shredded from HOA letters, each one with part of a name, part of a warning. On one piece, I could clearly make out Lot 12, Henderson. I called Father Thomas. No answer. Then the HOA hotline. A pre-recorded message played. Your property is currently under review. Please maintain full illumination. Corrections may occur automatically. I hung up. That night, I sat in the car at the edge of the lot. The grass was perfect again, uniform, soulless. But under the faint moonlight, I noticed a shape. A small bump in the soil near where my marker used to be. I knelt down, brushed the grass away. Underneath was a corner of white paper. I pulled. More dirt fell away, and another letter came free, sealed, spotless. This one was different. The envelope had handwriting on it. Mine to Mark Henderson from Mark Henderson. You opened the door last year. Don't do it again. My blood went cold. I checked the seal. It had been opened once before, and re-glued. Inside was a short note typed unevenly. The ground keeps record. Every volunteer leaves something behind. If the bell stops, it means the next ring is for you. The bottom of the paper was burned, not by fire, but heat, as if pressed against a bulb. I sat there until the sky lightened into gray, letter trembling in my hand, trying to understand how my name could warn me before I even lived it. When I got home, Jenna was sitting on the porch holding another envelope. This one was still wet. This was just here, she said, voice trembling. It has our address but no name. Inside was a photograph. It showed our house, same angle as our security camera. Porch light glowing, curtains drawn. But in the bottom left corner, you could see a faint shape in the window. Me standing at the door. The problem was I was already outside holding the picture. I rushed inside, checked every room, every window. The kids were still asleep. Everything looked normal, except for the front hallway mirror. The mirror wasn't reflecting the room anymore. It showed the porch as if it had turned around, and in that reflection a figure stood on the mat facing the door, wearing my jacket. And holding a letter, I smashed the mirror. Glass scattered like black ice. For a second, the reflection didn't shatter. It lingered, delayed, like the image refused to die. Then it dissolved, leaving nothing but my pale face in the outline of the lamp behind me. At 3 a.m. that night, the bell rang again. I didn't move, didn't breathe. It rang once, twice, then a pause. And then a third time. Soft, low, like the final warning before a countdown ends. I stared at the door. Something slid under it, slow, scraping against the wood. When I picked it up, I didn't even need light. I already knew the shape, the smell, the texture. Another letter, edges damp with soil. Lot 12, final correction scheduled. Confirm illumination. Prepare for entry. 3 a.m., October 31st. If you're listening to this, you already know how this ends, or how it starts. They say every neighborhood has that one house that never turns its porch light off. Now you know why. And if one night you hear your own doorbell ring at exactly 3:03, don't touch the door. Don't check the peephole. Don't even blink, because maybe it's not someone visiting, maybe it's you coming home. I don't remember the crash the way movies show it. No slow motion, no glass like glitter. I remember the wrong turn, the curve where the county road loses its paint, the way fog gathers low over the drainage ditch, and how a deer's eyes look like two dull coins when your headlights find them too late. I remember the wheel jerking left, then overcorrecting right, the shoulder giving out, gravel going to marbles, and the feeling of weightlessness that's more insult than fear. Then cold, then nothing. When I came back, it was because my teeth hurt. Not throbbing, pressure like my jaw was a hinge someone had wedged shut. The air tasted like pennies and clay. I tried to move and the world pressed back. Soil poured down my collar. Something scratched my cheek. Root, splinter, or a nail. It was dark in a way that eats sound. No moon, no lamp, not even that thin street haze you get from town. Just the smell of wet ground and old wood. When I turned my head, my forehead hit a board. When I pushed my fingers out, they found planks at my shoulder, too. Rough, damp, held together by a bent nail that caught my skin and said, "Don't rush." Panic is a bad tool, but it gets work done. I thrashed once and the boards gave a little. Dirt slid into my ear. That's when I realized the boards weren't a box. They were a lid, braced but not nailed shut. The space above me was shallow enough that my breath bounced back warm. I tried my phone, pocket full of mud and glass. Dead. I patted the other pocket and found the HOA badge, cold as ever, grit under the rim. I laughed once, stupid, and it came out like a cough. I tested the planks again, slow. When shifted with a dry squeal, I braced both hands and pushed. The nail scraped free. Soil fell in a soft collapse across my chest. I turned my face aside and spat dirt, blinked grit, pushed a second time. The plank tilted and light, thin as a dime, threaded through. Not daylight. The kind of yellow you get from 17 porches a block away. I got my shoulder under the board and levered. It lifted enough for a breath of cold night. I squirmed sideways, felt fire run down my ribs. My left leg screamed like it remembered the ravine better than the rest of me. I hooked my good knee, rolled, and came up into air thick with fertilizer and wet-cut grass. I was lying in a rectangle of earth, not quite grave deep. Not quite hole shallow, framed by boards set loosely like someone meant to cover. Uncover and cover again. Next to me, a length of orange survey tape tied to a stake. The number 3 written in Sharpie. At my head, a metal placard half buried, the varnish still sticky. Henderson, Lot 12, non-compliance $1,000. I stayed still and listened. The neighborhood hummed like a sleeping animal. In the distance, a truck on the highway. Closer, the leaf whisper of sprinklers that shouldn't have been running in October. Under it all, a rhythm I knew too well. Ding, ding, ding spread far apart, traveling through the subdivision like a pulse. Not my doorbell. Not anyone's. The sound you get when 17 houses share one timetable. I propped myself on an elbow. My jacket was soaked and tacky. I touched my side and my fingers came back dark. Not much, enough to be honest. My shin flared if I tried to put weight on it. The ankle had that thick, wrong feeling of a sprain that would own the week if I got a week to give it. The lot wasn't a lot anymore. It was a workspace. In the corner by the utilities easement, someone had stacked boards cut to rectangle length. A bucket of nails, a mallet laid neat, and a headlamp. Boot prints crossed the dirt in pairs, heel to toe, a measured stride. There was a thermos on the ground, still beaded with condensation. Whoever had been here wasn't folklore. They were late for lunch. I dragged myself out of the cut and lay flat on the grass, breathing through my teeth until the white edges left my vision. From here, the rectangles looked like the calendar I'd joked about weeks ago. 4 rows of 4. And mine raw in the third spot. 17 marked by stakes. One open. 2 blocks over, a porch light blinked twice in slow signal and steadied. A car door thudded soft. I kept low. Headlights swung at the far end of the easement, killed early. A shape moved along the fence, tall, vest catching what little light the night would give. They walked like supervisors walk, no hurry, no waste. Another followed, smaller, clipboard underarm. Voices, not words, just the color of them, confident, tired, doing a job that's gotten easier with practice. I rolled into the open rectangle next to mine and pulled a plank across my chest, leaving an inch to see. My breath fogged the strip of air. A round glow swept across my boards, paused, moved on. The thermos made a hollow clunk as someone nudged it with a boot. 3's done, the taller voice said. Not pleased, not sad, logged. Badge returned? Left at the property, the smaller said. Paper rustle, pen on metal, the little sounds of systems. Any lights non-compliant? Lot 13 flickered, adjusted. A phone buzzed between them. One of them grunted. Father's not picking up again. Stop calling him, the other said. He knows the terms. They moved down the line, light grazing each rectangle, stopping at the ones not yet covered. The taller set a plank, the smaller placed a stake. Hands practiced, sequence memorized. At the 7, the big one paused. Her husband's back from deployment? Move her to spring, clipboard scratched. Spring. Those boots went on past me, circled, came back. One of them stood within a foot of my face and the smell came with him. Cut grass, damp nylon, iron. I went still the way animals do. The faith that being a photograph will keep you from being touched. Close it up, the tall one said from 2 rectangles away. The smaller knelt. A board slid, found the lip. A mallet tapped once, twice like a door politely closing. They didn't cover mine. They didn't look at mine. It was already noted. They left with the headlamp, not in any hurry. The car door thudded. The engine turned, coughed, settled. Tires rolled slow on the service road until the sound became highway. The lot exhaled. I counted 60, then 30 more. When I lifted the plank again, my hands left prints shaped like decision. I crawled, dragged, pushed myself toward the fence line using the boards as islands. Breath small so my ribs would agree. At the corner I found the gap I remembered from summer. The sag where kids cut through to the creek. I slipped under on my back, the chain link shaving a thin ribbon of skin off my knuckle, and lay in the ditch until my heart learned an easier song. From there, the path home is something my feet knew even when the rest of me didn't. I took the drainage swale behind the Merritts, crossed under the low maple behind Lisa's patio, moved like a man who didn't want his own yard to see him. At our fence, I used the knot I'd hammered into the slat when the dog dug there last spring. Through, across, up 2 steps, and the porch boards gave that soft complaint that used to mean, you need to fix me, and now meant, you're alive. At the door, the welcome mat was empty. No badge, no envelope, no flowers. I slid the key in, turned slow. Inside smelled like lemon cleaner and laundry, Jenna's coping mechanisms. I stood in the dark kitchen and let the house map me back. Fridge to left, sink to right. The nick in the counter where I dropped the cast iron one July. The place the tile always feels colder. The lamp switch by the hallway waited for my hand. I didn't touch it. Breathed. Leaned my forehead against the cool drywall a second, and then I made a call. What is your emergency? My name is Mark Henderson, I said, and it sounded wrong, like I was borrowing it. There's been a crash on County 14 near the Hollow Creek turnoff. You'll find a skid into the ravine. I'm at home now, but I need you to send someone to the lot by the utilities easement behind the community center. The nature of the emergency at that location? Unauthorized construction, I said, because language is a game and I needed to play the one they answer to. Unsafe excavation. People working after hours. And I paused. The word that wanted to come wouldn't help me. And I think someone's missing. Are you injured, sir? Yes, I said. But I can wait. They told me to stay on the line. I didn't. I called Jenna. Her phone went to voicemail. I listened to her recorded voice say my name with a smile in it, and I had to sit down. I called Father Thomas next. He answered on the second ring like he'd been holding the phone. Where are you? He said, in my kitchen, I said. Where are you? In my car, he said. I went to the lot. I saw the lights. They're not ghosts, I said. They're men with headlamps. He exhaled a laugh that had no humor in it. And coffins are just boxes, he said. Do you need an ambulance? I need you to meet me at the church, I said. Bring whatever you have that's older than the HOA. He was quiet a moment. Come now, he said, before anyone decides to file paperwork about it. I left a note for Jenna on the counter that said what it had to. I'm okay. Call me. And walked back into the night feeling like the lot had left a fingerprint on my ribs. The road to the church runs past the community sign with the carved maple leaf and the slogan about harmony. A county cruiser idled there, its light bar quiet. The officer inside looked like every officer on every night shift I've ever known. Tired, patient, building a tomorrow out of forms. He didn't stop me. He looked at my face, at the dried mud on my coat, and gave me a nod. A man gives another when both of them have seen enough to skip a paragraph. Father Thomas unlocked the side door. The church smelled like beeswax and old wood warmed by 1,000 hands. He had the archive boxes on the front pew, brittle minutes from parish council meetings, photocopies of deeds with coffee rings on them, a parish newsletter from 1953 with a note about All Hallows lamps, homes on the creek to keep a light in the window for those gone ahead. He gave me water, and the look you get from people who sign up to keep others from drowning. I told him what I'd heard at the lot. Spring, lists, done, and the name for a thing we both refused to give the word grave. I told him about the mirror, the letters, the headlamps, the fact that the badge was always where someone meant me to find it. He nodded like a metronome. The living write the rules, he said. The dead write the habits. He set a hand on the newsletter like it could transmit something. If men decided to dress in old fear in vests and clipboards, that doesn't make the fear smaller. What do? I asked, and I hated the way it came out. Child's question in a man's voice. First, he said, you let a doctor look at you. Second, you tell your wife the truth and you don't dress it prettier than it is. Third, you call the county until someone who doesn't live under this HOA hears you. And fourth, he held my eyes until I had to look away. You do not answer a knock that doesn't come with a voice you love. I didn't open, I said. You also turned the lights off, he said. Not unkindly. And you went walking when they told you to stay. Something outside thumped. Not a door, not a car. The sort of sound you get when a hand sets something heavy on wood. We froze. The side door breathed cold into the nave. Father Thomas lifted the latch and opened it onto the little concrete stoop where old men shake each other's hands after funerals. On the stoop sat my badge, polished, soil washed from the rim. Next to it, a folded sheet of paper beaded with moisture. The priest didn't touch it. I did. The paper was heavier than the letters that had come under my door. Better stock. The HOA crest in the corner looked embossed for real this time, not printed. The header was a phrase the HOA loves when they want you to feel safe. Acknowledgement of cooperation. Under it, Lot 12, correction noted as complete. Resident present. Family retained. Fine waived. Inspection annual. Clergy. Liaison. Thank you for your discretion. Father Thomas read it twice, then looked at me with the tired humor men of faith develop when the world insists on being small. They've promoted me, he said. "I'm going to the sheriff," I said. "You should," he said. "Bring a picture of the boards. Bring the stake with your number on it if you can carry it. Don't bring the stories. Bring the nails." I stood to go and the room swam a little. The priest steadied me with a hand under my elbow the way my father used to when I was 8, and stupid near a ledge. He made me sit until the wave passed and the color returned to the edges of things. When I rose again, he pressed something into my palm, a little brass key on a string. "What's it unlock?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "It's just something to hold that isn't the badge." The county took my statement and the photographs I returned to take when the lot was quiet before dawn. By then the boards were stacked again, the stakes pulled, the soil raked smooth, the thermos gone, the boot prints softened. The deputy's face did what faces do when the picture doesn't show the thing you say it shows. Empathy. Apology, a note to follow up. Back home, Jenna stood on the porch in her robe, arms folded tight against a cold that didn't belong to the weather. She took me in, the limp, the dried mud, the bandage taped badly under my shirt, and she didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "Tell me everything," so I did. In the kitchen, with the lamp on, in the morning that made it all sound both crazier and more possible. We went to urgent care. I lied about the ravine. They wrapped my ankle, taped my ribs, told me to sleep and to stop doing whatever I'd done. We went home and the porch light clicked on though it was noon. I unscrewed the bulb. It went dark. A minute later it made a sound like a sigh and glowed anyway. I stood under it like a man under a sky he can't afford. I looked at the street where all the houses look like ours, and all the mailboxes know our names. I thought about headlamps and mallets and the neatness of the rectangles, and the way a town can turn a habit into a law. I thought about the ravine and the way the road pretends to be safe until it isn't. I thought about how a badge feels colder than metal should. That night, at 3, the bell didn't ring. The quiet lay over us like a blanket someone else tucked. I lay awake and listened for the sound of dirt on wood and didn't hear it. I pictured the stake with a 3 on it in my trunk, and the deputy's card on the fridge and the priest's key in my fist. I promised myself I would leave, and pay the penalty and suffer the letters, and chalk the rest up to a bad season a sane man can survive. And then, from next door I heard a bell, 1 ring and then 2, and then a breath held until it hurt. Lot 13, I thought. I put my hand over the lamp's shade and felt the heat it gave back. I said out loud in the dark so the house would hear me, "We keep the light on." If I am honest about what came next, about the meeting Jenna was invited to, about the vote the HOA called to stabilize the narrative, about how the mail started using different fonts, when I asked the county too many questions, I will sound like a man telling a story you pick holes in for sport. So I'll keep to the nails and boards and boots and the way the ground holds the shape you give it, if you press long enough. What I know is this: I didn't die. I went where the road led me. I slid where the ditch wanted. And I woke under wood someone else said. I crawled out because it wasn't nailed yet. Men in vests keep time better than clocks. A priest keeps a folder because he has to. And an HOA knows how to write sentences that fit on envelopes, and in the spaces where you wish fear would shut up. If you're listening, keep one lamp warm. Not for me, for the truth you may someday have to see in your own yard. And if your bell rings at 3, it does not mean the dead invented it. It means someone did. Tomorrow I'll tell you about the meeting Jenna went to, and the vote the board called, and what retained means when it's your family on the line. I'll bring you back to the lot in daylight, when the grass is a perfect green and you can still see, if you kneel, the mark of a mallet in the soil. For tonight, I am here on the other side of a door I did not open. My badge sits in a drawer. The key the priest gave me is warm from my hand. The porch light hums a little. The neighborhood sleeps like a choir that knows its part. And in the ditch by the Hollow Creek sign, tire tracks filled with water reflect a strip of sky that will be blue again when the sun bothers to look. We get to morning, or we don't. I intend to. It started with a letter that looked just like every other HOA notice, printed on ivory paper, folded clean, tucked in the mailbox between junk coupons and a flyer for carpet cleaning. Only this one had a faint fingerprint smudged near the B, top corner, and the envelope wasn't sealed, just pressed closed like someone had slid it in gently. afraid to make noise. The heading read, Mandatory Meeting, Resident Review and Safety Briefing Lot 12. Henderson family attendance required. Non-compliance subject to penalty. Jenna almost laughed when she read penalty. The word had lost meaning after everything she'd paid, in fees, in sleep, in worry. But the part that froze her wasn't the bold print. It was the date and time. October 31st, 9 p.m., Halloween. The sun hadn't even set yet when she got ready. She dressed in plain jeans and a jacket, tied her hair back, left a note on the counter for the kids. Mommy has to go to the HOA meeting. Hey, don't answer the door, keep the lights on. When she said it out loud, the words sounded insane. But the habit was stronger than reason now. Lights meant safety, and silence meant something watching. The meeting was listed at the community center, but when she got there, the parking lot was empty. Just her car, the sodium lamps, and the sound of one loose flag snapping in the wind. The glass doors were unlocked. Inside, the lights were dimmed to half. A handwritten note taped near the schedule board said simply, "Downstairs." Jenna hesitated. There hadn't been a downstairs last time she'd been here. But the hallway behind the vending machines was open, and sure enough, a concrete stairwell waited, cold air drifting up like the breath of a freezer. She went down. The sound of her shoes echoed on bare steps, steady, too loud. At the bottom, an open metal door led to a long room, fluorescent tubes overhead, humming softly. There were folding tables, a big corkboard, and about a dozen black binders stacked neatly in rows. A circle of chairs filled the center. Every chair except one was occupied. They were the HOA board, or maybe something older that just borrowed their names. Mr. Halverson, the president, was there. Gray suit, perfect part in his hair, clipboard resting on his knee. Mrs. Carter, the secretary, with her pearl necklace and that faint antiseptic smell. And the others, familiar faces, neighbors she'd waved at over the years, all sitting perfectly still, hands folded, watching her like she was late to a service they'd already begun. "Mrs. Henderson," Halverson said, smiling, "we appreciate your punctuality. Please have a seat." His voice was calm, too calm, the kind you use when calming a patient, not greeting a neighbor. Jenna sat. The metal chair screeched slightly. Halverson opened his folder. "We'll make this brief. First, we want to acknowledge your recent hardship." "You mean my husband's disappearance," she said. He smiled thinner. "Yes, that's one way of phrasing it. You see, our community is built on compliance, harmony, balance. Your husband's unfortunate incident disrupted that balance." Jenna felt heat rise in her throat. "He crashed his car. That's not—" "Please," Mrs. Carter interrupted softly. "Let us finish." Halverson turned a page. The paper made a sound too crisp for its age. Inside was a photo, black and white, slightly grainy, showing the gravesite lot, the same one Mark had described before. Except in this picture, the date in the corner was last year, before they'd even moved in. Next to it, a second photo, Mark's car, its front crushed, mud-splattered. Then a third, the open rectangle of soil, the stake labeled Lot 12. And at the bottom of the folder, a plastic bag with a small metal badge inside. The same badge Mark had worn on his lanyard, the one she'd buried in the drawer weeks ago. Her stomach turned cold. "Where did you get that?" Halverson folded his hands. "We never lost it." The woman next to him, Mrs. Carter, opened her binder. Inside were pages of names, dates, amounts. The columns were labeled compliance, correction, retained. The last name on the page was Henderson. Next to it, under correction, was the date, October 31st, 3:03 a.m., under retained, pending review. "Your family," Carter said softly, "was marked incomplete." Jenna's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means," Halverson said, leaning forward, "that when a correction is only half complete, the family remains under observation until balance is restored. You may have noticed the lights." She nodded without meaning to. "Good," he said. "They've been functioning properly. Your cooperation keeps the neighborhood safe." She glanced at the door. One narrow exit, no window. Her palms were sweating. "What happens if I don't cooperate?" she asked quietly. The room shifted. Chairs creaked slightly as the others leaned like a ripple in a pond. Halverson's eyes didn't blink. "Then your correction resumes," he said. A faint noise came from behind her, the door clicking once. Jenna turned. A man stood there, tall, gray vest, clipboard in hand. At first she thought it was a security guard, until he raised his head and the fluorescent light caught his face. It wasn't Mark, but it looked like him. The shape of the jaw, the curve of the mouth, the same tired eyes, just older, hollowed out, expressionless. The man didn't speak. He set the clipboard on the table and placed a new envelope on top of it. It was labeled simply, Lot 13, Notice of Adjustment. Jenna looked at the label, then back at Halverson. "My neighbor," she whispered. "The Rileys." Halverson smiled faintly. "Correction is community." Mrs. Carter slid the binder shut. "Your attendance is appreciated, Mrs. Henderson. You may go now." Jenna stood, but her knees felt weak. "You think this is normal?" "This is normal," Halverson said. "That's why it works." She backed toward the stairs. No one moved. When she reached the bottom step, she looked back one more time. The board members still sitting in perfect formation. The man with Mark's face standing by the door. But now there was another sound. Faint tapping, rhythmic from somewhere beyond the wall. Like wood being nailed shut. Tap, tap, pause, tap. She climbed the stairs two at a time, heart hammering. When she burst out into the night, the parking lot was still empty, except for one new car parked 2 spaces over, engine still warm. The passenger door was slightly open. On the seat, a small HOA folder lay open with the name Riley printed on it. She didn't look inside. She drove home fast, lights off until she reached her own street. Her porch light was already on. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet. She locked every door, then sat at the kitchen table with shaking hands. The envelope from the meeting was still in her pocket. She hadn't even realized she'd taken it. She unfolded it under the lamp. Inside was a single typed page. Lot 12. Compliance Update. All residents are considered under protection during review. Maintain light, refrain from inquiry, await instruction. Retained subjects must not leave community boundaries. Maple Hollow HOA Compliance Division. At the bottom, something handwritten in red ink. He's still there. Jenna pressed the paper flat. Her pulse beat against her jaw. Outside, the porch light flickered once, long, deliberate. Then from somewhere in the distance, faint and hollow, came the sound of a hammer. 3 slow hits. Halloween came in quiet, which is worse than thunder. By late afternoon, the cul-de-sac looked like a magazine cover. Porches neat, pumpkins polite, not a strand of fake spiderweb anywhere. HOA had discouraged clutter. Jenna spent the day doing ordinary things with the intensity of someone on the edge of a bridge. Laundry, a roast in the slow cooker, homework checks. The kids argued about nothing. I taped my ribs again, iced the ankle, and avoided mirrors. At 5:12 p.m., an email landed from Maple Hollow HOA Compliance. Subject, Safety Reminder, Lot 12. Thank you for your ongoing cooperation. Please maintain porch illumination. Stay within community boundaries after dusk. A compliance review will occur at 9 p.m. Non-compliance may result in correction. Jenna read it twice, then slid the laptop shut like she was trapping an insect underneath. "We're not leaving the house tonight," she said. "And you're not answering anything that knocks." I nodded. We locked the back gate, we checked windows, we left every light on as if we were throwing a wake for our own address. At 8:41, a cardboard "Meeting in Progress" sign appeared on the community center lawn. At 8:55, a county cruiser idled beside it. The deputy from 2 nights ago leaned on his door, arms folded, watching the clubhouse without watching it. At 9 exactly, our doorbell chimed once. Not the heavy tone, just the normal chime I'd installed with my own hands. A sound that used to mean neighbors and packages and everything simple. I went to the door and stood without looking through the lens. It wasn't a visitor. A notice had been taped to the glass. Lot 12. Compliance review. Passed. Next review. 03:03 a.m. Do not open. Do not open, Jenna read over my shoulder. They want you to obey, or they want a record that you disobeyed. Both, I said. We left it taped there. I sat with my back against the door like I had the night the bells started, breathing through the ache in my ribs, counting the hums. Of the refrigerator, of the furnace, of my own name in my head until it shipped out. At 10:14, a text came from Father Thomas. I'm on the block. If you hear anything, call twice and hang up. I typed back okay and stared at the word until it looked like a mistake. At midnight, the street went still. No teenagers, no laughter, no music 2 streets over. The quiet wasn't the quiet of bedtime. It was the quiet of a room where someone is about to speak. At 2:51, a porch light on the far corner blinked twice. Lot 13. Jenna's grip tightened around my forearm. At 2:56, the hammer began, faint, measured somewhere past the community center. Tap, tap, pause, tap. I started to stand. Jenna pressed my shoulder down. If you go, she said, you'll only see enough to make you useless. At 2:58, our thermostat cycled to heat on its own. The vents gave a soft sigh. From the kids' rooms, the glow of their nightlights looked too steady. At 2:59, an SUV turned onto our street slowly, like it was following a script. It parked at the mouth of the cul-de-sac. Halogen beams cut across plywood fences and perfect hedges. The engine cut. The door opened and shut. Footsteps made their way toward 13. Then another set, lighter, quicker, coming from the opposite end of the block. The pattern felt choreographed. At 3, the bell rang at the Rileys. 1 chime, then 2, then a breath. Our hall clock ticked so loudly it sounded like an argument. Jenna's eyes found mine and stayed. At 3:01, a scream began 2 streets over, and cut off the way screams do when someone remembers they're not alone. At 3:02, a shadow passed across our porch window. Not a person. The suggestion of motion. A clipboard tapping the glass with 2 fingers. Polite. At 3:03, every porch light on the street brightened by a single degree, like someone turned a dial. The bell at the Rileys rang a 3rd time, and then, for the first time since we'd moved in, our bell rang too. 2 houses, 1 chime. Then nothing. I looked at Jenna. She shook her head once, firmly. We do not open, she whispered. The handle below my shoulder twitched under my palm as if a hand on the other side had decided to test hardware. It didn't turn. I kept my weight against the wood. The door, our door, did a small thing I might have mistaken for a sigh. Silence returned, the kind that contains the sound of 200 people holding one breath, then a different sound. Not a bell. Metal on metal. Down our street, the Rileys' garage lifted. A motor groaned, then clanked, then stopped halfway. I pictured the gap under the door, a stripe of outside the width of a forearm. The overhead light flicked on, off, on again. Through our blinds, I could see the strobe wash their front hedge, wash the sidewalk, wash a shape crossing through. It could have been anything. Jenna squeezed my hand so hard our knuckles talked. We're not their witnesses, she said. That's how they keep you. Watching is part of it. Something slid under our door. The paper caught on the welcome mat rubber and folded itself. I didn't pick it up. Jenna did. The letters at the top were printed with smudged ink as if the toner was nearly spent. Lot 12, status unchanged. Remain indoors. Do not assist. She tore it in half. Who taught them to talk like this? She said. Her voice broke on talk. In the living room, my daughter's nightlight dimmed for a second and came back. I stood from the door and went to their hall, touching each knob like a reliquary. Both kids slept lopsided and unbothered, bodies doing what bodies do when they're not yet hired by fear. I sat on the floor in the hall with my back to the wall and listened to our house pretend it was a house. At 3:17, the SUV's engine at the end of the block started without a hand, idled, and shut off. At 3:19, the hammer out toward the utility easement stopped. At 3:20, the cul-de-sac's every porch light flickered in sequence like a ripple through a pond. Somewhere, a sprinkler head hissed. It wasn't warm enough for sprinklers. At 3:29, my phone buzzed with a message that had no number. Compliance achieved. Below it, a single initial, H. I deleted it, and it returned like a stubborn fly. At 3:33, a siren wailed briefly on the county road and went quiet. The SUV eased away from the curb, rolled to the corner, and dissolved into night like a car does when it belongs to the dark. We stayed on the floor another 20 minutes, long after the math of it said we could stand. When I finally got up, my right foot had fallen asleep so deeply it felt like a stranger. I flexed it until the pins faded. Jenna put the kids in our bed and closed the door soft. In the kitchen, she poured coffee we wouldn't drink. I stood under the porch light and felt its warmth through the glass. "Are we leaving?" I asked. "Yes," she said, not defiant, resolved, like a vow. "We'll pay whatever they want. We'll sell if we can't sell. We'll go." "Tonight?" "Today," she said, and before sundown. At 6:12 a.m., when the HOA office opened in software even if not in person, Jenna sent a notice of intent to vacate through the portal. It returned an auto-reply. "We acknowledge receipt. A move-out inspection can be scheduled within 90 days. She phoned. No answer. She phoned again. A voicemail offered 3 options that didn't apply to us, and a 4th that hung up. By 9, the street wore its normal face. Kids in costumes at school drop-off. A neighbor walking a dog who never once lined up with his own reflection in the window. A landscaping truck rattling past with blowers whining. The Riley's trash cans at the curb, labeled in crisp vinyl letters as if being labeled prevented being lost. I limped to the community center to meet the deputy who said he'd go on record if I brought something more than a story. I carried a stamped photo of the rectangle, boot prints, boards, stake. I carried the stake itself under a yard bag, numbers written in thick black surveyor's tape faded orange. I carried my badge in a sandwich bag like evidence. The deputy looked at the lot where grass now lay flat and green as a brochure, and gave a long, low whistle that can mean many things when a man is wearing a uniform. "You mind if I take the stake a few days?" he asked. "I mind what happens if I don't," I said. He took it. "You didn't hear it from me," he said. "But there's been calls for years. Nothing sticks. People move. Files go dark. But bring me things that rust, nails, boards. I'll write until they make me stop." When I left, Halverson was standing on the clubhouse steps in a jacket you could use as a level. Nothing out of line. "Mr. Henderson," he said pleasantly, as if greeting a parishioner. "We were sorry not to see you at last night's meeting." "I was home," I said. "That is where you belong during compliance windows," he said. "Thank you for keeping order." "What happened to the Rileys?" I asked. He smiled with a kind of patience that you only develop if you've practiced control for a long time. "Order was restored," he said. "Stability protects us all." I waited for him to ask about the stake or the badge or the ravine. He didn't. He simply looked past me at the signboard where Pumpkin Walk, canceled, hung under community bake sale. Saturday like nothing else had ever been there. We packed. Documents, medicine, the weird things kids decide are essential on moving days. 2 crooked Lego builds, a beanie that smells like childhood. Jenna taped boxes like she meant it. I lifted, boxed, braced, listed, and pretended my ribs cooperated. By noon, a for sale. By owner's sign leaned against the hydrangea. By 2, the kids were in the car with snacks, headphones, a plan for who sits where. At 2:37 p.m., an HOA vehicle idled at the end of the street for 60 seconds and rolled on. At 2:45, a new email arrived. Lot 12, move-out denied, open correction. Retained families may not exit until review period ends. See bylaws. Gore 14.4. We weighed it. Leave in the equal of night? Or obey the thing that wrote itself into our day? There is a kind of bravery that is just endurance with posture. There is another that is bad math. We chose the road. At 6:58, we killed house power at the main. The porch light stayed on because of course it did. The kids climbed into the back seat with their quiet bravado. They think every move is an adventure until a box is missing a toy. We pulled away at 7:05, taillights stitching our street into a line I could cut if I looked back. I did not. At the stop sign, Halverson's SUV was parked nose in, windows up. He didn't move. He didn't need to. He had the kind of face that says, without speaking, "We'll finish this on paper." On the county road, Father Thomas's headlights found our bumper and stayed there like a blessing you can see. When we passed the Hollow Creek sign, I looked for the place where the ditch took me days earlier. The grasses were brush cut. Fresh filled dirt had been raked across the slope. Someone had tamped it into a clean line. Someone had painted a small orange 3 on the guardrail, and then painted over it with primer that didn't quite match. We reached the service road. The priest flashed his brights twice. We took the curve that lets you choose a different town. Jenna's hand stayed mild on the wheel like a person carrying soup across a crowded room. Behind us, the sky over Maple Hollow brightened a fraction, as if 1,000 bulbs had come on at once. It made no sense for that much light to exist. It looked like daytime in a snow globe. We drove. We found a small rental on the other side of 2 highways and an honest river. We unpacked toothbrushes and the coffee maker, and the 4 plates that matter. The porch light here is antique brass. It screws out by hand with satisfying weight. It behaved like lights do. On when you ask, off when you ask, no opinions. We slept like escaped things. The kind of sleep with drool and forgiveness in it. In the morning, a package waited on our new stoop. No carrier label. The cardboard was clean. The tape neatly cut already, so all I had to do was lift the lid and decide what to be. Inside, our badge, polished, wrapped in a dish towel from our old kitchen. Under it, a single piece of ivory paper. Lot 12, vacancy confirmed. Next review when you return. Please leave the porch light on. No threats, no dollar amounts, no stamps. Just that calm font. Just that sentence people in offices write when they know you have a family and a future. And a threshold you will cross again because life is a circle of errands. We didn't go back. The county called twice. The deputy said his report would sit a while. Father Thomas sent 3 texts over 3 weeks. All pictures. One of the community sign with a fresh coat of paint. One of the lot level as glass. One of a new banner. Maple Hollow Pumpkin Walk, family-friendly fun. On October 31st the following year, at 9:00 p.m., in our new little place on the other side of 2 highways and an honest river, the antique brass porch light clicked on by itself. I went to the switch. It was off. I turned it off again because that's what men do. Declare small victories. It turned itself back on and held. It wasn't bright. It was just patient. At 3:03 a.m., the bell rang once. Not loud, not low. Not theirs. Ours. The sound our house makes when a neighbor comes by with a misdelivered package. When your kid locks herself out and grins through the glass. When your life still belongs to you. I did not open. I did not go to the peephole. I sat on the floor with my back to the door and counted to a number that meant morning. The light hummed gently through the wood. A small living thing. The morning, a letter lay on the mat, slid under during whatever hours paper chooses. It had no logo, and the paper was not ivory, and the font was a human hand. You did right. Some places never learn what they are built on. Don't go back. There was no signature, but the O in don't was drawn like a little halo. I folded it and put it in the drawer with the badge. Some nights I take them both out and let them sit beside each other like opposing testimonies. We sold the Maple Hollow house to someone who smiled easily and asked normal questions, and loved the way our maple turned early each fall. At closing, I handed over keys that remembered me. The agent slid a single page across the table, a boilerplate disclosure about an HOA rule set we no longer belonged to. I signed and it felt like squaring a ledger. If you need an ending, here is mine. We live where the porch light listens first, where the bell ring means pizza, where the rules are obvious and small. On Halloween, we buy too much candy and give it away as if we can bribe the night into liking us. At 9:00, we turn our light on by hand. At 3:03, when the house is one big animal sleeping, I wake and I listen. Sometimes there is nothing. Sometimes there is one sound like a quiet cough and I say out loud into the dark, "Not tonight. If you moved into Maple Hollow after us, I hope your mailbox fills only with coupons and lost invites. If you don't, if a letter ever asks you to serve on graveyard patrol, if the lot behind the utilities shed looks too new for October, if a man in a vest says thank you for your cooperation before you cooperate, then hear me the way I should have heard the first notice. Keep the light on because you choose to, not because they wrote it down. And if a bell calls you by name, do not open for anyone who can prove they are you.